Introduce your multi and then I'll hand it over. Welcome everybody. My name is Fred Dixon. I'm the product manager for Big Blue Button, and welcome to day 2 of the Big Blue Button World Conference. The theme for today is going to be on administration, which means setting up, maintaining, and supporting fairly large-scale deployments of Big Blue Button. We have a really good session to start off with. It's my pleasure to introduce Malte Dreyer. Malte and I have known each other for probably 8 months for a year. There's been a huge amount of use of Big Blue Button around the world, and probably no more so than in Germany, for a number of reasons. And the great thing was that the use of Big Blue Button was enabled by all the open source components that we had provided. So the Big Blue Button community provided Big Blue Button itself, SQLite Load Balancer, the Moodle plugin, and a fairly active community of people to support it. So it's my pleasure to introduce Malte Dreyer. He's the director of IT, Humboldt University, Berlin. Malte currently works at the Computer and Media Services at the Humboldt University. And Malte does research in computer and society, computer communications and network, and computer security and reliability. And Malte, I'll turn it over to you, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks a lot for the introduction and the opportunity to host this session today. Very nice, because we, during the pandemic, start of the pandemic until now, Big Blue Button really supported the schools and universities in Germany by high degree. First of all, I have to introduce you to to the ZKI. That's a German membership corporation, and it's kind of comprising all the higher education IT centers. And it has working groups, and one working group is for strategy and organizational aspects, where all the IT heads are organized in. The ZKI overall has around 300 members, which is around 80% of all universities in Germany. And within this ZKI, we conducted a lot of surveys during the pandemic, just to organize ourselves and to find help in these difficult times.
Okay, we just wait a moment if Malte is reconnecting. Yeah, I'll just come back in a second.
Oh, could you hear me?
There you go, Malte, you're back.
Okay.
Here, I'll make you presenter again.
Thanks. Yeah, so many of the surveys I will show you were conducted by the ZKI. That's the timeline of the pandemic. As all of you might know, beginning of March, we all learned that we have to prepare for digital semesters. And to get things started very quickly, we immediately also in April started to conduct some surveys, which services are deployed, how the IT is affected, what services have to be created and designed in a very fast way. And so all in all, there were quite some surveys. Later on in the year, also one on the usage and deployment of Big Blue Button. And in February this year, Top Trend survey, quite a lot. And you can see here as well, that's the green one. That's the European Court of Justice ruling, Schrems II. I will talk about that a bit later. One of the surveys showed immediately that video conferencing systems, as all of you know, during the pandemic, got far more priority than they had before. Before, it was nice to use video conferences. During the pandemic, it got essential. Kind of everything is relying on that. So also the reliability, performance, and ease of use of these video conference systems are a lot more important than before. As you could see here, most schools and many universities in Germany are using Big Blue Button. And it's quite impressive to me how big many of these installations are. Some for the schools, like in Baden-Württemberg, are up to 200,000 concurrent users. The one in Mainz, as I will show you later, can handle around 50,000. And many installations also for universities can handle up to around 5 to 10,000 concurrent users. So all in all, that's an impressive number of BBB installations in such short time, just during a pandemic. That's an example from University of Mainz. On working days, they do have up to 250,000 participants, 45,000 concurrent participants, and that's quite a high number in my understanding. And that's very important. This is the feedback you could give after each BBB conference. And the left side is the user feedback and the right side is the moderator feedback for the conferences in University of Mainz. And you can see that feedback provides quite high satisfaction with the BBB system, which is, this one is from this year. So it really improved, and the version 2.3 also helped a lot to get the feedback better from BBB. Now I think it's quite well established, and as the numbers show, you can rely on it. In February this year, we also made a survey on which solutions are used. You can find the QR code here at the bottom right to get to the study in English. And that compares which video conference solution is actually in place in the universities. And you can see a small win for Big Blue Button here, 2 votes more than for the second place Zoom product, which is a huge success, because when you compare, you could compare to this survey we did last year, then the numbers are kind of, BBB is just starting with around 10 installations, and Zoom was a winner. Now the picture changed a bit. So many are really relying as the first video conference solution on Big Blue Button. And because of that, in the ZKR working group, we started a concerted effort to improve Big Blue Button for German higher education institutions. So the objective was we have a need for strong video conference solution that supports European standards for data protection. That's about the Schrems II ruling. I will show you some. And we found out that the biggest needs are about security, scalability, and the functional depths necessary. And as all of you know, the version 2.3 delivered a lot of that requirements. And additionally, we established a financial framework contract with Blindside Networks. And currently, I think 16 universities signed it to have some ongoing relationship and to support the ongoing developments of Big Blue Button and bring in and discuss the features necessary within the German community. The BBB community in Germany is very active. For example, there are now weekly developer meetings. I think it's every Monday. For software developers, there's a ZKR working group to exchange. That's more the group for the IT heads. There are workshops every 4 to 8 weeks about the experiences, best practices, and the future and upcoming activities. Yeah, the service agreement, as I just said, about with Blindside Networks, and a lot of discussions going on about what and which features are required and what could be done to improve Big Blue Button. And that's one talk later. I don't want to take the slides from, but there are a lot of outcomes from the developments here, like one BBB at scale with a lot of very nice and interesting functionality. One aspect why Big Blue Button had so much impact in Germany is illustrated by this survey here. It's as you can see, that's the top trend survey 2021. What has been the top trends for the German IT centers? And the first 4 are the usual suspects. You could say it's cloud, information security, data protection, and digitalization. But the 3 I highlighted here are quite new. They never have been mentioned so far in other top trend surveys. So they are very much related to the pandemic. And digital sovereignty is one coming up from the Schrems II ruling. I will have to explain to you because I think people from outside of the European Union are probably not aware of this ruling. The background is that in July, the Court of Justice declared the US Privacy Shield invalid, which was quite a disaster for many because it means we've not been able from that point on to directly use services provided from the USA, not provided from kind of EU data centers. And that made the problems we had during the pandemic, of course, even more severe because now there was these questioned all the services we could easily buy in for the pandemic. And one measure to contract US services was the Standard Contract Clauses, SCC. And so now we have to reevaluate all the contracts and all the measures to take to improve data protection, data privacy, and data and security. So that's a big extra effort during the pandemic to establish the solutions which comply and take up on the Schrems II ruling. That is one of the reasons why Big Blue Button was favored by so many institutions because, of course, with an on-premises installation, you could easily fulfill all of these requirements. And currently, by that ruling, or even a bit before, the term digital sovereignty, as most of you, I suppose, are aware of, is a high-profile term now in the European Union to define what is necessary for digital sovereignty on the different layers. Like you have the layer 0 here, the raw materials or rare earth materials, and but it goes up to digital things like the infrastructure as a service, platforms, data spaces, and software technologies. So if you like it, there's a very interesting paper about that, elaborating a bit more on these levels of digital sovereignty. In last year, I think in November, we did a survey on priorities for further BBB developments. And as we learned from Mainz, or I learned from Mainz University, they always consider the product of number of open videos and number of participants. So like you have 20 open videos and 20 participants means the product is 400. And they always measure with these product numbers. So before the version 2.3, usually this product was around 400. Now this product with the version 2.3 could be for our installation around 1,000. That is a great improvement. And so this highest priority was really taken care of. Scalability, audio quality was taken care of. So many of these things could already be solved, although these requirements were just defined in November. Currently in the ZKI working group, we are working on the new requirements. So we try to find out what are the actual priorities and what's still missing to have BBB as a real world-class top solution. And we are still into discussion, but many of the feedback is around user settings, server settings. What Fred already mentioned is a virtual background and the blur functionality. Some things about Moodle integration, an additional presentation mode, and some more collaboration features, and about sound quality. But that's ongoing discussions. Just was interesting to me to see which areas are the most interesting now. Yeah, that's all from my presentation. Thanks a lot. And before we start, we are open for questions. Are there any questions in the chat before we start the panel? yeah, this comment always comes that it's for weak PCs or weak notebooks, it's might be very difficult, but that's hard to solve, I suppose. How do you deploy Big Blue Button servers is another question. I think that should be related to the people presenting after us. These are the administrators and technicians. In principle, we saw several different scenarios. Some is as Mainz did it. They used a supercomputer. So they had very good scalability because the supercomputer had a lot of nodes available and they just used that one. We at Humboldt University, we made it different. We bought a lot of EPIC servers because they have a very good price performance ratio for Big Blue Buttons. So we could have this round of 256 threads in each server. That's quite cheap solution to us. I think every university, dependent on their culture of procuring servers, will have a different style to that. Exactly as Fred says. Simultaneous translation, I think that's also covered by or addressed by many universities, currently not in a concerted approach, but individually, like we are in contact with a Berlin startup company to provide this simultaneous translation and transcription. I think some people are testing this Firefox solution. I'm not completely aware about the other open source solutions for that. There's Christoph Krupper. Can you give a little impression about the BBV installation in your data center? That's what I said about the EPIC servers. And many universities have around 1,000, 2,000 CPUs for that. I think that's quite normal now these days. Yeah, exactly. As Michael Klotzka said, a solution for translation will be shown on Thursday. There are many things ongoing. I think it could be worthwhile to have a workshop on that to some point in time to collect all these ongoing activities about translation and transcription. Thanks a lot. As we now going to start the panel, you could think about further questions and just ask it to the panel a bit later. I would like to start the panel, and I would like you to briefly introduce yourself and answer the initial question of why BBV is important at your institution. And I would like to start with Jörg Last. Could you perhaps briefly introduce yourself?
Thank you, Malte. My name is Jörg Last. I'm the head of IT of the Cooperative State University in Baden-Württemberg, and the university is distributed about for 12 branches in the state, and we used BBB for the administration matters in the first step. So we had a lot of other video conferencing systems in the education sector, and we use it for the administration matters because of data protection issues. And therefore, this was the main matter we introduced BBB in the last year. May I hand over to Vincent?
All right, with pleasure. So it's my pleasure to be there. So thank you very much, Malte, for inviting me for this panel. So my name is Vincent Evelyn. I am a CIO of Heidelberg University, and I'm also leading the computing center there. As a matter of fact, we are deploying Big Blue Button on a large scale at Heidelberg University. And the main goal for us was to cover, in fact, teaching. So all teaching activities, in fact, almost covered with Big Blue Button. The main motivation is surely the issue of privacy, compliance, data protection. But I have to say also the fact that we have a tool with Big Blue Button which is highly versatile and can be used without any clients, just having, in fact, indeed, your browser. As a matter of fact, this Big Blue Button is the most used, in fact, video conferencing system by far, really by far, in our university. We had quite a large discussion between the, let's say, just seeing these slides, the different competitors, and for all teaching activities, in the meanwhile, administration, and also for part of the research activities, this is in fact the key system we are using. Again, one of the key aspects is compliance issues. Oh, you're muted, Malte.
Thanks a lot. William, please.
Yeah, thank you, Malte. Thank you for the invitation. My name is William Lindlar. I'm working for the department or the Ministry of Education in the German state of Rhineland-Palatinate. Perhaps you know that Germany is also a federal state with 16 states, where also the education politics is in the hand of these 16 federal states. And I'm in the Department of Education, one of the managers for digital education in schools. And so I'm also one of the managers of this big Blue Button installation, which Malte mentioned in his introduction, which we are running with the University of Mainz. Colleagues from University of Mainz are also here. And I have to say thank you at this moment for this cooperation, offering Big Blue Button by University of Mainz for our schools in Rhineland-Palatinate and for the other universities in our state.
Could you perhaps elaborate a bit more how the federal system works for schools in Germany? Because I suppose many are not aware of that.
Yeah, sure, I can. So in Germany, we have these 16 federal states, and education is one of the main politics fields which are in the hand of these federal states and not of the federal government of Germany. And so we are, for example, for our state, for Rhineland-Palatinate, offering lots of services for schools, also in the digital field. And other states in Germany have made other decisions and are offering other tools and other systems for their schools. And for example, our Ministry of Education very early in the pandemic in the last year decided that we want to offer one web conferencing system for all the schools in our state, which doesn't mean that every school has to use this central web conferencing system. The schools have the choice even to choose other ones, but they have to care about the data protection standards Malte and others already mentioned in this talk.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I would like to ask the panel for getting started, what is your main usage scenario at your institution or your responsibility for William for using Big Blue Button? Let's start again, same round with Jörg, perhaps.
Okay, thanks, Malte. Yes, as I mentioned before, the main reason was that we had to cope with data protection issues, and that we therefore decided to install a BBB system for the administration section of the university. And we then started to increase the installation so that we can serve all the education needs in that. Currently, we are able to serve around 8,000 participants simultaneously with our installation, and we are able to add a couple of web-based servers to this installation if it is needed. And we see that step by step the personnel and the lecturers are going to use BBB because it's easy to use. We have low barriers to get a room. We included this into Moodle, so that if you start your lecture, you just have to click on it, and then the session opens. So I think that we are still on the way here, and we will see an increasing use during the next months, although we have a couple of other systems running. So we use WebEx, we use Zoom in the university. Nevertheless, the data protection issue is still a matter, and I think we should use BBB as a kind of backbone for the whole system here.
Yeah, Vincent, perhaps, what is your main usage scenario?
All right, thank you, Malte. So it's slightly different, but leading almost to, well, I would say to the same solution. So at Heidelberg University, the key challenge we had to manage is teaching and offering a platform for lectures in a very quick way at the beginning of Corona. So we wanted to have a solution which is on-prem, and we wanted, and we are taking very seriously all concern about privacy for our students. And I think this was one of the key motivations to check, first, what kind of system can we have on-prem? Secondly, what kind of system is open source? And by this means, we'll have quite level of compliance. We started, in fact, in a small scale, so for some lectures, and I have to admit that the success was such high, the demand was such high that we very quickly, in fact, just deploy Big Blue Button on a cloud infrastructure. We already had an OpenStack platform, and were able quite quickly to offer this service. So we have possibly the same setup as Jörg, in the sense that we do not have only Big Blue Button, so we have WebEx and Zoom and Teams as a further systems, but for teaching, we give the official recommendation to use indeed a Big Blue Button, and we accept only if there is a very good reason not to use Big Blue Button. Only for in that situation we accept the use of other tools. Big Blue Button, in the meanwhile, is strongly used in research and indeed also in our administration. But the origin, I would say the starting point for the deployment was indeed lectures during COVID, and in the meanwhile, it's a kind of normal way to use Big Blue Button, in fact, for the online lectures.
Thanks a lot. William, what is your main usage scenario for these installations hosted or supported by the Rhineland-Palatinate government?
Yeah, as I already mentioned, it was the decision to offer one system to all the schools in our state. And after this decision, we first started with a commercial tool, which we licensed for half a year in the last year. But we began parallel to that in starting and upsetting this Big Blue Button installation. And our main need was also to fulfill the high European data protection standards. Also, that this court decision wasn't already filled in at the beginning of the pandemic. And so we also started to look for a web conferencing tool which meets these high European standards, and which we can run on our own servers, and also meets these standards for the future.
Thanks. What do you think are the biggest differences between BBB for schools and BBB for universities? Are you aware of any bigger differences?
I think that one interesting thing is that we also have very young students which used Big Blue Button in our installation. So that means that starting from the first grade, our small pupils had to use this Big Blue Button mainly at the second lockdown we had in Germany, starting from December of the last year. And also to explain to these small pupils that they have to make something like an echo test, and that they should use a headset. It's clear that they are instructed also by their parents at these challenges, but I think it's a quite big difference compared to university students, for example.
Any other answers, perhaps from you, Vincent?
So I could imagine, but I'm not sure, I'm not an expert about the school system, but I could imagine that the scenarios of use are maybe slightly different, in the sense that there is a need for the students to meet together without, I would say, supervision of any person. So we notice that at Heidelberg University, there is a huge demand from the students to interact together without, the framework of a lecture. And this is possibly a slightly different scenario as compared to schools, maybe, where this demand is not such high. And indeed, we can, based on a Big Blue Button, we have offered such kind of services where students have their own rooms and can use it, in fact, for interacting together. But, well, I would say with respect to the number, maybe the second point would be possibly the sizing of the conferences, sorry. So we have very large lectures, for example, of 200, 500, even 1,000 for some conferences. I assume, but maybe I'm wrong, William, I don't know, but I assume that this is maybe more specific for universities.
That would have been my answer as well. When we have the 101s or the introductory lessons, that might have up to 1,000 participants. Jörg.
Yeah, the biggest, I can add that the biggest scenario in the school, in German schools, is some conferencing with all the teachers, which can be about 200 persons in maximum. Yeah. This could be a bigger conference in our setting.
There's one question from Stefan. What maximum number of users is possible inside one room with a version 2.3? I have in mind that it's the factor of 1,000. So one camera, 1,000 participants means a factor of 1,000. But I think there's a Kurento limit which Fred could explain.
Yeah, okay. So I don't think we would recommend yet 1,000. I'll talk about this in my presentation, but in 2.3, the message handling in the backend got improved a lot. So instead of one single node process, we now can spread it out over multiple node processes, and more CPUs, you can have more. We are fairly conservative in the Big Blue Button project. If you know that we always say like 100 users or less. There was one, Terry Kaufman just posted, they've seen like 260 participants with 5 webcams. We'll probably give fairly conservative guidance. I wouldn't give 1,000. We'll probably say 200, maybe 250, and we'll leave it to the community to sort of push it a bit harder. But you'll get a lot more scalability. Just not 1,000, I would say. Probably around 200, 250. But that's not hard coded. There's still room above that if you have lots of CPUs.
Mm-hmm. There's one question to William. I live in the state of Hesse, and according to several teacher friends of mine, a big bottleneck appears to be the amount of bandwidth that a school has. How do you deal with that in Rhineland-Palatinate?
Mm-hmm. We try to improve also this bandwidth, which is a problem in some regions of Germany. We try to help the schools even in that. There are also the cities where the schools are located in charge of this bandwidth and internet connection things. And but in the setting we had during the lockdown, the 2 lockdowns in Germany, the bandwidth in schools hasn't been the problem, because also students and teachers were working at home. And so we were very happy with some other functions in Big Blue Button, for example, reducing the bandwidth, and also with the telephone connecting option of Big Blue Button. So this is a quite good alternative for teachers, but mainly for students which don't have this good internet connection.
We at Humboldt, we also increased our bandwidth to the outside exactly for that purposes.
Malte, if you don't mind, we just talked about the scenarios in which BBB is used, and we as DHBW, we used it also for committee meetings in our sector, because there was no way to meet in person, and we tried to develop that explicitly to have this data protection issue in that case served, and we tried to include polling matters or other things in this sections by including other softwares, so that we can have all the processes we need for the committees within BBB. So I think we have a very big variety of usage scenarios, from school settings to university or group work up to the committee part then.
There was one more answer from Fred to this 1,000 user issue. There's one solution developed by Riyad Weiss in Tunisia called Sprout Breeze, which is exactly aiming for that scenario. I have one more question. Why was the decision made in favor of BBB in 2022? That's interesting. Perhaps we could start with Jörg this time.
We had a colleague in the IT section that should be a good tool to work on. So we checked it, and we decided that this is a good tool for us. And we then try to set up a team of experts that explicitly work on BBB for us. So we have a dedicated team in one of our branches that really is just working on BBB and preparing and providing it for the whole university. By chance, so to say, or by expertise. So,
thanks, Vincent.
This is a very, very good question, Malte. So, as a matter of fact, I would say we were quite successful with using Big Blue Button, and we want to continue on this path. And as a matter of fact, we did not have a lot of time to interact with other institutions. So we had to work very quickly and to be able to provide and deliver the needed services for the university. It turns out that we noticed that Jörg is there and was also very successful in using Big Blue Button. It turns out that Malte Dreyer is very active and doing a very, very nice work in Germany. And so we discovered at some level that we are not alone in using this technology and using it in a successful way. And I think, so currently we have, in fact, almost at least two reasons. One reason is that the state, Baden-Württemberg, is willing to indeed improve and think bigger in the direction of Big Blue Button. And this is quite, to my opinion, quite an interesting project to see if we can indeed define a kind of service for the academic world in Baden-Württemberg. And we would like to do that, of course, in cooperation with other institutions, and ZKI has already prepared, in fact, I would say the field in a very, very nice way. So to keep it short, we are highly motivated because we know we are not alone. We were quite successful in using that, and we know there is already a very active and vivid network working on that topic, and there is here, to my opinion, very good potential to, let's say, to build on a system which is highly compliant. And I think, you mentioned in your presentation data sovereignty, and I think for the academic world, this is surely a very important topic. So this is some of the reasons why we want, and we are going to continue on that path.
Thanks. I think you're totally right. One of the main aspects why we've been so successful in Germany deploying BBB was we got the community started very fast and got together. That's very important. William.
Yeah, I think it was, in our case, it was on the recommendation of University of Mainz, of the IT experts there who gave us the advice to start with Big Blue Button.
Yeah, Fred, could you help us? Do we have some more time, or are we already at the edge of our slot?
So there's actually just 2 more minutes left in the official, but I would recommend, if you guys have a little more time, hang around for a little bit. We'll stop the formal recording in about a minute, but I think there's a lot of people here that would love to continue to interact. The talk has been fantastic. So you could probably just spend the next 15 minutes fielding questions from the community as the chat is going up pretty quick. And let me just, I'll say some comments and then I'll stop the recording. It is fantastic to hear just how much Big Blue Button helped so many schools in Germany. The point about that you collaborated together fairly early on was a key factor, because you were, and as I saw from some of the collaborations, a lot of people were able to share their knowledge. And so you didn't have to learn from first principles. From that, a lot of schools got going quickly, and we can see some projects that are coming out of that, like BBB at Scale and others that are enabling scalability for Big Blue Button. It inspires us too in the project, because we know that there are always things that we can do to improve. The themes that I'm hearing are certainly usability, especially for kids who are using it in early grades, stability to make sure that the support costs are low. Scalability, we'll always try to push to see how many users we can get into a session. And perhaps most important of all, after you get all those, it's the features that enable the teacher to engage students. There are things that we have planned, which I'll be talking about tomorrow in my presentation, in terms of just ways we can engage the student more. But at the end of it, it's to make sure that it remains true to open source, focused on the needs of the teacher, and to continually work with the larger community around the world, so that not only the consortium of people that's working together in Germany, but those features and feedback also come back into the core project, so that as we continue to improve it, we make sure we're improving it for your needs as well.
I think that's a very important aspect, to be close to the teaching and learning community. That could be really a unique selling proposition, kind of.
All right, awesome. And so with that, I'm going to just stop the recording. Thank you all for listening in and joining the session. It has been a great presentation. I thank Malte and the panelists for their sharing all their experience.
Thanks a lot to all of you.
Fred, you can go to the next one. I'll hang out here and keep an eye on what's going on, and I'll kill it when everybody's ready to go.
Sure, you can keep it open.
Yep.
So, thank you, Vincent. Jess has the next session, so I'll stay here for a few more moments.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of questions about people who were probably outside of Germany, asking about how do I scale, how do I do this, and a lot of the talks later today will talk to this. One of the themes I heard was in terms of the privacy, in terms of like making sure that the data protection was respected. That will always be the case with Big Blue Button. That was a great slide too, which I tweeted out a few minutes ago on the survey results of people, that Big Blue Button was picked over pretty much all others. Just looking through the chat to see if there's anything particular that people are still asking about. Just some general feature requests and that. Sergey, William, Vincent, is there anything in particular from your community that you would love Big Blue Button to be able to do in the next 3 to 6 months?
We first, I think it's good to say that we were very happy, and our teachers and students were very happy with many functions of the new version. For example, the hand raising function, which some of our teachers requested before. And I think one challenge is the virtual background, and another challenge is the option to download the presentation, to download the everything you made on the interactive one.
And I have a knack for web development, doing that for the past 4 to 5 years. And I'm currently in my last semester of my master's degree in computer science. For 27 years now, I'm really enthusiastic about computer science. Since day one, I could think about, I really always thought about computer science, and it's like the most interesting field for me. So yeah. I'm also a maintainer at BBB at Scale, and a heavy BBB or Big Blue Button user, nearly using it daily for meetings, for lectures, or just for having a chat with colleagues. And last but not least, I really love coding. So let's get into it. A few words about BBB at Scale. Jess already introduced it. So what is BBB at Scale? We titled it as an all-in-one portal solution for large scaling online learning and teaching scenarios. And we decided for option that we want to represent our existing physical rooms into the virtual world. So we could have something like an adaptation of our current situation in the virtual world with time scheduling. We try to create a front end that is easy accessible for our teachers and students, and they can find their online lectures and just find the right place to be at the right time. Also, we offer API. It's the standard Big Blue Button API to connect different LMS systems or even different front ends to the system. At the core, we use or we load balance BBB meetings and also manage our room servers, recordings, meetings, tenants, and users all in the platform. We offer a support chat, which showed us or was really useful for us in the last year. It's for time critical, or we use it for time critical requests. For example, my room is stuck, or I cannot join the room, or XYZ. So it was really handy for us to have this. And recently, about 2 weeks ago, we added the tenant support. So you have one deployment, and you can host multiple tenants on this deployment, and even have tenant-specific authentication. I will come later to this point and show you how to set it up and show some possibilities how to use it. Okay, so maybe the question why we developed BBB at scale. Of course, COVID-19 pandemic. That was like the core reason. Okay, no, we had some other reasons too, but that was the start of our, I say, development journey. And March 17, 2020, we realized that, okay, the next semester, because of COVID, won't be a normal one, and we had to switch to remote lectures. So we needed a solution around about within a month. So our lecture started at April 20th, 2020. It needed to be friendly or user-friendly for teachers and students. And in Germany, it had to be GDPR compliant. So GDPR, like the German GDPR compliant. And we wanted it scalable because, okay, Big Blue Button was one of our first solutions we took, but we saw, okay, it's hard to scale it. And we needed a scalable solution for multiple thousands of users. So we decided to develop an own portal that will scale Big Blue Button, and we named it BBB at Scale. Of course, it's open source. We released our first release at June 19th, 2020, so around about a year ago. And we really believe in open source, one for quality assurance, and just giving back the community of BBB, because BBB is open source, and we said, okay, we just want to give back to them and to you, so we open source as well. And round about 1 year later, we released our 3.0 version on June 6th this year. And we are happy to add new features, to add the tenant support, and do future development. Okay, so that's enough about the history, but all this wouldn't be done by one person, or isn't done by one person. So we had a team, and at this point, I want to say thanks to the initial core team. That was the early days, so it was end of March last year. It was one of our funny hat days. Maybe you can spot me. I know I'm a little bit hidden. I don't own a funny hat, so I decided to make a Kenny cosplay, and I'm in the purple hoodie. But other than these people you see here, our community has grown. We have a lot of contributors that contribute translations or contribute with issues, with bug reports, with feature requests. So feel free and check out our repository. I will have a few links in the slides, so you will have the the right link here later on. So big thanks to these people and the community that I don't own pictures of and don't have the consents to show them. So yes. Maybe for these people who don't already know BBB at Scale, it's on a meta level how it works, right? It's not too deep now, so I will just give a quick overview. If any client wants to create or join the meeting, it would be the same as if I want to join, for example, with one Big Blue Button server, but now we have, for example, 60 or 70 Big Blue Button servers. So the client makes a request to our BBB at Scale deployment, which then looks for the appropriate server, makes a server request. The server either responds in form of a direct response or webhook, and we as BBB at Scale give the join meeting link back to the client. And after that, the whole session communication runs between the client and Big Blue Button themselves, and we just get notified if the meeting when the meeting ended, so we can clean up afterwards. To give this a little bit more perspective, here's our, maybe not the recent one, but our deployment at the university. So you can see the clients are like here in the top right corner. Our BBB at Scale is deployed in OpenShift. We have many nodes and HR Postgres. And we have different type of worker machines which are connected with a central storage based on CephFS. And we have the BBB worker nodes, which are the nodes that the meetings are actually held on. We have a processing node, which is simply there for processing the recordings. I will give later a little bit more how we manage the recordings, because it's at the moment a little bit special. But we will change it in the near future. More to that on the last slide, or the second last slide, where I will show the roadmap for until the end of the year. And we have the playback nodes, which are only there for playing back the recordings by Big Blue Button. So this is our example setup. With this setup, we had, or since we are using it since the first release, we had different scenarios we used. So maybe you can find one of these scenarios suitable for you. And we just wrote them down. At the moment, we are like in the right corner in the mixed multi-tenant deployment. I will start on the first deployment scenario, which is either a single tenant deployment or a multi-tenant deployment. It doesn't differentiate that much. It's you can authenticate your users either by OIDC or OIDC provider or Django or the Django model backend. And for example, you don't want to use any other front ends and LMS systems, so you just want BBB at Scale as your front end, and you can manage everything with it in this scenario. Second scenario would be you would only use the load balancing feature of BBB at Scale. So you don't want to use the front end or the user management or I don't know what. It's possible too. So you can use it as a single load balancer. You can still administrate your servers in BBB at Scale and have just the overview, what servers are running, what meetings are running on the servers, and have like a little a base where you can access everything you need. And obviously you can connect different front ends and LMS systems, since we exponent we give you the Big Blue Button API to connect to. And I will talk about this a little bit later, because we don't implement the full API yet, but it's one of the goals we have to do until the end of the year. And the third solution or deployment strategy scenario we talked recently about was a hybrid lecture deployment. So one part of this is already done. So we can represent our physical rooms with a time schedule. So you could have, for example, if you booked a room or you have an event with an event schedule, you could just connect an event collector to the room, and the upcoming meetings are displayed in the table. I will show you where and how we did it. And the second feature is not released yet, but already implemented. It's one-click access for lecture rooms. So, for example, you're in a room and just want to start a Big Blue Button session. You just click on that. It's starting the room with everything you need. Your moderator, the camera will be connected, and so on and so on. For us, we are moving us in the last scenario in the mixed multi-tenant deployment. So it's a combination of everything. Okay, it's we have multiple tenants which are either via OIDC connected or via the Django backend. We have tenants that only uses the load balancer functionality. We have tenants that are not authenticating directly through, for example, or authenticating through LDAP, Shibboleth, or OAuth 2. It's all within our Keycloak we use, and for the Keycloak communication, we use our OIDC provider. And we even can share rooms between tenants. And like I said, we are working at the moment in a hybrid lecture scenario, and we are using, or we are testing it here in our university. So let's get started in the solution in the front end. So like I already said, I know it's a little bit small, but I wanted to show you the whole picture. It's not important what exactly is written where. If so, I will zoom in. So that's something a user would see if he's not logged in. It's a table of our general rooms that are public, or even a tab for personal and home rooms that are set to public so people can access them. For example, our lecturers use their home rooms as a personal meeting room and setting them to public. So if they are, for example, online, every student can just access them and ask them questions. It's like an appointment, an open appointment they can come to. In this table, you have two columns with the current and the next occupancy. That's the event collection I talked about for the schedules. You have the state of your room, if it's active, inactive, or creating. You have how many participants are actually there and how the room is pre-configured. If you log in and, for example, have admin rights, you will see something like this. In the top section, it's like most front ends, we give the option to create personal rooms and access their own home room and edit them, for example, making them public so they are shown on the front page tables. For logged in users, we have the support chat. So for time critical requests, yes, you see a little bit more now as a user, but this is a session for administrators. So I would like to show you the look if you are admin of this system. And I will now go through every single feature because most of them are just create, read, update, delete functions of the entities. And that's something you could explore or read about if you just deploy your own instance of the portal, but be sure you can manage nearly everything you see on or inside this picture. One of the most important things I would say for us was the release 3.0 with the tenant support. And the tenant support or the tenant is represented by a name and a domain. The domain is this what a tenant will be associated with. If, for example, I go on the domain rooms-staging.fbh.h-da.de, I will have a different look and feel as for the hconf domain. And I will have different authentication methods. So either way, like I said, you can use the Django mobile backend if you don't have a central application where you manage your users, or you could optional add authentication parameters. It's an OIDC provider, and we use Keycloak, and with Keycloak we were able to authenticate via Shibboleth, LDAP, different OAuth2 methods, and obviously local Keycloak users, which we don't really manage in our in BB at scale then. So if we redeploy everything, our users don't get lost and still have access to the system. Okay, so how does the auth parameter look like? I know, again, it's a little bit small, and this time I will zoom in because everything on the left, it's like it's OIDC standard, right? Client ID, secret, authorization endpoints, token endpoints. That's something you will have to fill out, and things that you may or may not use. They are defaults or are not necessary, so you can just choose how to customize that. But one thing is important, because at this point we break the OIDC standard, and it's the last two parameters. If you uncheck this point, you don't use the OIDC standard for unique usernames. The standard is OIDC guarantees if you combine the subject or the sub and the issuer together, you will get a unique username. We said, okay, that's cool. We want to use this, but we also want to have the ability, for example, for our solution, that we don't use this standard. Just we as operators of the platform, we will make sure that our users and the usernames in one tenant are unique, and we will use this claim that the user sends with our tenant and make it to a unique username. And with this, we have to make sure that these are unique. So if you want to have different usernames and don't want to carry the Keycloak users within every iteration of Keycloak or something, you don't want to export the users and have a LDAP or something else where the users are located, maybe you want to export this setting. Okay, what claims are we expecting if you don't use Keycloak? Because Keycloak sends most of them by default, or at least the bottom ones. If you want to give your users some roles and some permissions, we expect a claim named groups, and it's an array, and in this we expect following parameters, and these will be mapped in our application to grant you the permissions to specific features. For example, supporters are able to activate, deactivate the support chat, to use the support chat, to answer messages, and so on and so on. Super user and stuff, you know what they do. They do everything, and moderators are these people that can start meetings and are moderators in the Big Blue Button sessions and so on. And for us, it's our teachers that we have at the university, and people that hold lectures and different seminars. The preferred username, if you never had a deployment or you use the standard OIDC username, you don't have to give it to our application. But if you do, and you don't use the OIDC standard for usernames, that could be a solution how your username is given to us, or the username you use. And if you have a running old instance, for example, 2.15 or something, you can pass this, and users with this old username will be migrated into the new user with the new username, and all resources attached to this user will be migrated as well. And these are optional, but I would recommend to give a given name, family name, email, and name. Name is displayed or is saved as a display name. So you may want to pass them to us so we can show your users correctly. Okay, So let's go on. You already saw the small window, the small support window. This would look like if you're a supporter and want to answer messages. You can enter a chat, you can search the chats, you can leave a chat, you can choose a prepared messages, for example. On the left side, you can create prepared messages. You have the settings about the support chat. You can activate or deactivate it. So yeah. Let's go on. And one of the most important things are the scheduling strategies. At the moment, the scheduling strategies are two entities, which we will separate in the near future. On the one hand side, they are scheduling strategies. On the other hand, they are server pools or used as server pools. What does it mean? Servers and rooms are connected to the scheduling strategy, and this decides on which server or on which pool of servers the meeting will be created if you start this room. These scheduling strategies are important for every LMS integration. So you have something, you have the name, which needs to be compliant within for a domain, within a URL. And you have the registration token, which represents the Big Blue Button secret. And if you want to use them in the LMS, wrong slide. I will have another slide after that. You will have to use the domain. I will show the full link in our hidden features because it's not documented well. And yeah, you can decide which tenant the scheduling strategy is used for or is shown for, and everything can be done in this panel. For different scheduling strategies, we already have that are free. It's least participants. It's, I would say, the least best working one. So it checks every server which is up and has the type worker attached to it, and it chooses the server with the minimum current participant count, which doesn't mean that much, but hey, it's one thing to schedule. The second strategy is the least utilization. We calculate a utilization for every server, which is also up and from type worker. We calculate or we consider in our calculation the max video streams and max participants you set up for the server. You can say, okay, I have a bare metal installation, and the bare metal installation can handle 100 webcams or 200 webcams and 1,000 of users. And these numbers are considered in our calculation. And obviously as well that video streams are much more resource intensive than normal audio users. So everything together will give you a utilization, and from these servers with the minimal utilization, the first server is picked. And we discovered a third scheduling strategy by accident because we had some issues with the second one. If one server, for example, was faulty, but he was the only server with the least utilization, a meeting would always be scheduled on the server. So we decided to give a third option, least utilization random pick, which exactly does what it said it does. So it calculates the least utilization for 5 servers and picks the 5 servers, and from that he picks a random one. For example, if you have a faulty server and the meeting doesn't start on the server, your room would be reset, and you can just create a new one, and you probably won't get the same server again. Okay, quick look at our room configuration tab, and the important part here is the event collection configs. You can set for each room, you can set an event collection. The possible event collections or collectors we have implemented is a simple iCal collector, which you reference with the strategy name simple iCal collector. And keys are necessary, an iCal URL and the encoding, and you just pass as a JSON object in the or a dictionary in the database field like you saw here. I will zoom in a little bit so you can see it. You just pass it like this in there, and the collector does everything automated. So the second one we implemented is for an ERP system used by German universities, KISS and KISS iCal. And the strategy name is KISS iCal Collector. And the keys you need is the KISS URL, KISS ID, and the KISS encoding. And the last one, but hopefully not the least one, is the EWS, Exchange Web Services Collector. And the strategy name for this is the EWS Collector. And the necessary keys are the EWS server, the EWS room email, the EWS user, and the EWS password. If you need any other collectors, we implemented this with a strategy pattern. So in the folder in our repository, you will have a base file and our free implementations of the mentioned collectors. So feel free, implement the collector you need by yourself and make a merge request, and we will have more collectors in the future. Okay, and with these collectors, you can actually collect the event schedule for a room or so on. And I think it should be the last slide about the UI. These are our room types, which are basically the standard configuration for a room we set. And this will be the default. Every room will reset when the meeting was ended, because not everyone wants, for example, recordings in a lecture room. But people want, if they start a room, they can choose, okay, allow recordings, but the next one doesn't want to. So it's resetted to the default, and he doesn't need to uncheck the recording or allow recording. So those are our room types. Okay, and obviously we got a dark mode. Every good tool needs a dark mode. So we also got one. Actually, when I made the slides, the next slide wasn't in. It's we merged this yesterday on our main branch, but didn't release it yet. Something changed, so you don't have the theme panel in the left corner. Now, if you click on your name and the icon, which is here in white, you have like the usual settings where you can choose the theme you would like to use, and several options, which are user-specific BBB options, which we now implemented. Maybe not every option, we are still developing it or implementing it, but something like, for example, you can skip the audio check, or you can allow for yourself if your video should be recorded or not. So yeah, that's something that is pretty new. I think we merged yesterday in the evening, so the slide just slide it in, and yeah. So let's come to the hidden feature part. I teased a little bit in before, and let's start. Okay, our apologies, we are not the best in documenting stuff, and it's a high priority for us. So our documentation is currently under construction. So if something is new to you and you still already used BBB at scale, sorry, I know we are working on the documentation and we will do it better in the future. So let's get started with our hidden features. So the LMS integration, like I said, it's based on the scheduling strategy. So a scheduling strategy is needed. The URL for this would be something similar to the URLs if you for example, use Moodle and the Big Blue Button plugin. Something like this should already be familiar. It's your domain, then you have to add our part with /core, then the name of your scheduling strategy, and Big Blue Button /API. And the shared secrets for the BBB server would be the registration token of this scheduling strategy. And with this, you can use, for example, Moodle with the Moodle plugin for Big Blue Button for our solution. It's also working, for example, with some different front ends, for example, Greenlight or something. Yes, we don't offer the full API. I think around about 70% are implemented. everything what is about recordings we still miss, and we will get into that in the near future. Then recordings, yes, we manage recordings. And for that, we have a GitLab group, BBB at Scale, and you can look at the repository BBB to MP4. That's how we manage at the moment our recordings. I don't want to get too deep into it because this will be reworked very soon. It will be my master thesis, and so we will change the recording handling and orchestration from the ground. Later, or in the next slides, I will talk a little bit about it. Then the agent is used for automated registration at the moment, but will be extended soon. So if you want to register your servers automated in BBB at Scale, you could check out this repository. It's not documented yet, so be aware you have to read the code, because everything is documented if you can read the code. So feel free. I would consider this as a hidden feature, because you can always see if something is tested, because we have automated build, test, and QA stages, and these will be extended also in the near future. And if you want to contribute, we have a commit guideline and automated style checks, which are represented in the pipeline, and you can always look locally for these two. And we auto-generate our release notes and change logs for upcoming releases or for done releases. The cron jobs are not really hidden, but we use them as a fallback. So I just wanted to tell you that they are recommended to, if you want to run BBB at Scale implementation, you should consider, and this is truly in our getting started guide, how to set these up. It's the collect server stats. It's a fallback to if the webhooks are not working and you want to collect what meetings are running on the servers and which are not. Then the housekeeping task, if something went wrong with closing a meeting and it's not running anymore on the server, but BBB at Scale thinks it's running, it's still running. That's this task for, and reset stuck rooms. I mentioned earlier, if a room is in the creating state and something went wrong with the network, or I don't know, the webhook got lost or something, and the server doesn't know that the meeting should be scheduled there, reset stuck rooms resets the rooms periodically. Documentation I already mentioned. RTMP streaming, yes, we implemented a solution that uses open source solution with the Docker streaming. So you can hand over a URL, and a systemd timer monitors the running meetings. And if a meeting has had a RTMP streaming URL, the Docker will start and connect to the meeting and stream the meeting to the given URL. If you're interested in this solution, this might be reworked as well in the future. We will look later on the roadmap. And but if you need this solution ASAP, just contact us and we will get in touch with you and provide you our solution. So the second last one is webhooks. So if you use the support chat, it's the moment we use it like this. You can connect a webhook notification for the support chat, which will send you, for example, a notification, hey, there's a new message with this and this from this and this user in chat, in external chat tool. We use Matrix for that. And maybe this is not a hidden feature, because you can look in the repository and you will see that we have Helm charts. We ourselves deploy BBB at Scale with these Helm charts. So feel free to deploy it too with Helm. We think it's a much suitable or more suitable solution to deploy it scalable than just run Docker containers. Okay, so I mentioned our roadmap. We are now somewhere in the middle of the year, and until the end of the year, we want to implement these features or these things. Some of them are already implemented. Like I said, the user settings already on the main branch, right? The recordings orchestration. It's not yet implemented, but will be one of the most important features in the near future. Obviously, not only the orchestration, we want to manage the recording lifecycle inside of BBB at Scale, just to have one entry point for the administrators and know where is which recording on which server, who's processing it, and so on and so on. For that, we will extend our agent, and we'll do it through this agent implementation. Obviously, BBB API is not fully implemented and exposed yet, so this is one of our major achievements, which we will do until the end of the year. With the recording orchestration, the server orchestration is just as important as orchestrating the recording, so it goes hand in hand. We want to improve our scheduling. So first of all, we want to separate scheduling strategies from server pools. And then we want to create some failover scenarios and give the community the option, for example, to implement their own strategies, like we did with the event collectors. Streaming. So we said we have a streaming solution that's working for us, but maybe there are different solutions that do not use systemd for monitoring. So there's even a solution that is written in Django or in Python with Django. So we want to integrate them into the portal. The complete testing strategy. Okay, I think that's obvious. So you don't have to think about, oh, is this breaking change and will kill everything I done to the system. You will have front-end UA, smoke, load tests, and everything automated as possible, as far as possible. Pre-upload your presentations via post request when you create a BBB meeting. That's not supported yet, but will come. Also, we want to extend our tenants as we have them now. So, for example, specific statistics and analytics for tenants. Extended settings, for example, for sharing resources, or if you want to be fined or not fined, or if you want to be able to share your room with another tenant or receive such a room from another tenant. So extended settings for each tenant. And obviously, own look and feel. You can customize the logo, the favicon, and so on, but you could have a much more easier solution to change the theme of the website for each tenant, so that will come as well. And last but not least, import data migrations, I would say. For example, if you want to switch from another tool and you say, okay, I have already 200 rooms, 300 rooms, and 200 users in my solution. Yeah, that's two. And documentation, of course. That's something we want to do so as well. Okay, so with this, I'm at the end, and I'm up for your questions. Sorry, I just talked a little bit too much. So yeah, if there are any questions, immediate questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dominic. Let me get my webcam back on here. So yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. That was awesome. I do want to let everyone know there is another session starting at 12:30. Fred Dixon put the link to that session in the chat. But Dominic and I will stay here and we'll make sure that people get their questions answered, and you can feel free to stay in this room to the end of the session. And just so everyone knows, these sessions are being recorded, and at the end of the week, we will be sending out the links to all of the recordings. So with that being said, it looks like we have lots of really great questions in the chat. One of them that I see is, how many Big Blue Button servers can you handle?
Good question. We didn't test a real limit yet.
All right, Daniel, I just switched the live stream over, so we're now live. There'll probably be people trickling in as the other talk finishes up. And in a moment, I will do a formal introduction and give you the floor. All right. All right, welcome everybody. This is the third presentation for today. Very pleased to introduce Daniel Mulkenton, who will be walking us through the experience from InfoRun for scaling Big Blue Button for schools in a lockdown from scratch. So as a brief bio, Daniel is an open source contributor to more than 20 years working on various projects, mostly as a developer. In addition, he's always been a system admin at heart. And at InfoRun, he has worked with a team that runs a huge scale Big Blue Button cluster and contributed various patches. He's also involved in the packaging efforts as well. Daniel, over to you. Enjoy the talk.
Thank you, Fred. I'm gonna walk you through that interesting time that Fred already announced. And I'll be shortly introducing myself and InfoRun. Myself, I think Fred has mostly done that. I'll go over all the challenges that we had that are multifold in type. It's technical, it's social, it's also completely unexpected external factors. And of course, I'm gonna talk about how we're going to go from here. Yeah, again, Fred said most of the things. I'm an active open source developer since the early 2000s. I've lately adopted video and video processing with open source tools as one of my hobbies. I'm a sysadmin at heart, and I've become an author of a developer's book on Qt, more or less by accident. But that's a story for another day. And I live in Berlin, Germany. InfoRun, this is actually an interesting story. The initial idea was to create a hosting cooperative, or for the Germans, it's Genossenschaft. And the basic idea was, yeah, you know, I've got some of these rare IP spaces lying around, and let's do good things with it. And let's make sure it doesn't go, you know, it's not sold for big money, but it's going to be put to good use. And later that year, at the CCC, yearly CCC Congress, Cyber for Edu was founded, which is basically designed to educate schools, school administrations, teachers, and the like about the possibilities and also the challenges, and try to solve that when it comes to teaching online. And almost, you know, it's almost foreshadowing, because just a few months later the pandemic hit, and there were first step at an educational event, and there's just no way to do this. And we thought, okay, this may be a good way or a good opportunity to test this Big Blue Button thing that we wanted to offer to schools. And we quickly realized, okay, we can't do this on a single machine, and we can't do this by hand. So how do we do this? And we quickly settled for Ansible, because that's what we were using previously. Noemis, thankfully, has done a lot of work in that regard. So we picked up on the role that Noemis wrote. However, then we quickly also needed to sign contracts, and Genossenschaftsgesetz basically says that you have to go through an audit that can take up to 6 months, which we didn't have. So instead, we went for a limited liability company as a surrogate construct. And well, currently we are running a large Big Blue Button cluster serving public schools. So the offer is there for all public schools in Berlin through the Senate of Berlin, a lot of schools in Bavaria through a partner of ours, and also various schools in other states that are actually using our Big Blue Button cluster. Also, the Senate of Berlin has contracted us to help them revamping their Moodle instance, which is called Lernraum Berlin. And we already successfully introduced single sign-on with Keycloak and the GDPR compliant retention policy that was requested by the data protection officer. We're also setting up our own data center at that point. Why? We'll go into that later. And what is very important to us is that everything we do or we host it has to be open source software. So how did we get to Big Blue Button? It was fairly simple. Cyber for Edu tried Jitsi, had their own Jitsi instance, and it became pretty apparent that that would not scale. So BBB offered a lot that we knew was needed, so that's what we went with. So I was mentioning that we were bootstrapping Big Blue Button. So, but how do you go about something like that? And we didn't have any hardware that we owned. Obviously, we did not want to go to the obvious hyperscalers for GDPR reasons, but also for reasons that we found they weren't actually that cheap. So we found a pretty reasonable hoster and started out with a couple of VMs that quickly escalated to a few hundred VMs. I think 200 at the peaks. Those were Intel machines, 8 dedicated cores. We managed to host around 120 users on average, and this is really only an estimate, because it's really hard to tell how many users have a satisfactory experience. And mostly, this is mostly due to Currento, and we'll talk about that in a second. Also, we had a companion VM for Turn. We used to use CodeTurn. We switched to Eternal, which worked better for us in general. And the reason why we were so happy with VMs for so long as we were is because it was really a really fast ramp up and maintenance experience. However, it turned out to be rather expensive. And so it was time when we felt like we understood the process and we were comfortable with it to reevaluate alternatives. And those alternatives came in the form of 100 physical servers, 12-core Ryzen machines. And with BBB 2.2, we realized that 150 users are realistic again. I'll go into detail as to why that is. And that was way below potential. And you probably heard this in the other talks. And then we went into optimization. We reduced update rates in the BBB HTML5 client. We rolled out the packages that Daniel from TU Chemnitz did. And we also productized 2.3 early. And that meant we had this this bottleneck that the single-threaded or single process HTML5 host out of the way. But predicting the quality of service that we provide with that remains a difficult job. And that is because, and I've brought you a Grafana screenshot here. And the interesting part is this is not from the pandemic. This is a recent screenshot, but you'll realize I've removed the scale because, ironically, the scale doesn't really matter here because what you're seeing is the amount of sessions that is in yellow, and the green line is the amount of participants. And what you can see is that there's lots and lots of participants per session. So the session remain rather static, but the amount of participants joining jumps up, and that is because classes are a bit different than what you would see, for instance, in typical university usage. And there's like 20 to 30, maybe sometimes more than 30 students in it. And most of them, and I'll jump there, let me see. Yeah, there we go, are supposed to show that they're there, which is especially popular with primary school teachers. And if you attended the first session today, you will have heard that this is like handling is difficult for primary school students, but because they don't really know who's there, they want to make really sure that that all hands are on board. So they ask everyone to enable their camera. And behavior is quadratic. So if you have like 30 people starting their camera, that was just, or especially when going into and returning to breakout rooms simultaneously, which is Corentus bottleneck, simultaneous connection handling. That was just impossible with 2.2. With 2.3, we saw an improvement, but nothing that would really let us sleep well at that point. But it works a lot better. And here's a challenge that is entirely unrelated to Big Blue Button, really, but also an interesting aspect. In March, we received an email from our hoster that we explicitly asked if this type of traffic was fine with them. And they basically said, well, I'm afraid you busted our calculations. And the background here is that Deutsche Telekom really applies pressure to both the customers and their customers' target providers to pay them money for the traffic. So obviously our hoster had to pay Telecom per megabit that we made extra to whatever they negotiated with Deutsche Telekom. Megabit per second, that is. And that obviously got very expensive for them, especially because we were not the only ones to run Big Blue Button at that specific hoster. And as a consequence, they said, you can stay, but we're going to void all your included traffic from now on. So 0 included traffic. And you'll have to pay a special price per gigabyte that is significantly beyond what we would normally let people pay. And well, if they aren't mean, they're also incompetent ISPs. And Vodafone really was one of them. There's just no other way to say it. They rolled out a firmware update for their cable customers that broke Big Blue Button, probably also other applications that use WebRTC, but specifically Big Blue Button. And the only workarounds that they gave out was to disable hardware offload, which of course people were not happy about because it would jitter like hell, so it wouldn't really help. And it would also significantly reduce the bandwidth that they sold. So if you sell a gigabit and suddenly there's only less than 100 megabit left, then of course your customers are not going to be very happy. At the same time, the other proposal was that you could either request a downgrade or an upgrade, which, depending on the hotline personnel that you met, meant writing an email or even writing a letter. So that was quite absurd and caused a huge support load. And luckily, we weren't alone, so shared pain is less pain, but it was still very painful. And it was good that we always had information flowing within the German Big Blue Button community. The next challenge is teachers and technology, which is of course a stereotype because these days most teachers are as old as I am, even younger, so they know their way around digital things, but at the same time some don't. And surprisingly, they really need a dial-in and quick. So I rang up on a friend of mine and I was like, yeah, I need a dial-up solution. Can we sit down and hack something? And he was like, is it FreeSwitch? Yes, it's FreeSwitch. And I know you know FreeSwitch. And he was like, okay. So we came up with something that is now a dedicated Ansible role. Basically what it does is take a zip trunk and distribute it depending on the node number. So we assign each node a number. So it's node number.bbb.info.run. Well, then the zip gateway will forward the call to the respective node, which will then take the call and join it to the respective meeting. We had to introduce anonymous call blocking because obviously it's very tempting to just give out the number and let someone call anonymously and disrupt the meeting. We haven't found a good solution to only show the number to moderators in some meetings, but for other meetings, everyone should see it. So that's something that's actually worth improving on that I didn't mention in the things worth improving on. So bear that in mind. The other thing that people had a problem with, it's non-obvious and also a real problem that the first person to join in a room cannot do so by phone, assuming that, for instance, the teacher does have difficulties with their internal microphone. They may want to call in via telephone, and that didn't work. We found a workaround that is now part of the ABBA role, which is basically the successor of the anonymous Ansible role. And maybe we find a way to cleanly integrate that into Big Blue Button upstream. The other challenges were security related. Of course, the obvious advantage of open source is that you can actually do your due diligence and check the software for problems. And one of the findings that we had was that system depermissions were off, meaning that the system service files belonged to not to root but to the service user, which meant that if you managed to execute code in as a service user, you had an implicit privilege escalation. We reported that responsibly. Others did as well. In addition, we mitigated that via Ansible in the meanwhile. Unfortunately, we saw regressions within the 2.2 area, and yeah, we need a way to make sure that is not happening again. But we'll talk about packaging later. FreeSwitch was shipped with basically a full configuration with things that we deemed unsafe. So we trimmed it down and hardened FreeSwitch with AppArmor. And also we looked at other service files and applied security measures. We also saw the problem that some BBB nodes would suddenly fail to work. And one of the way that manifested in was a failing echo test. So how do you deal with that? We wrote a functional test with Selenium that would basically export the status of the echo test working or not working and export it to Prometheus and do so for all the hosts in the cluster periodically. On failure, the node gets flagged as failed, and then it's still a manual intervention because we are not, obviously it's a bit hard to always assume that a single failure or two is immediately a permanent failure. But what we do is remove it from the cluster so it can drain meetings, reboot the machine, and rejoin the node to the cluster. And actually, that exporter, just like everything else I noted, is open source, and you can use it for your own cluster if you so like. More challenges was that as we looked at Scalelight, we found it had no concept of multiple tenants, and sharing the secret for obvious reasons is a no-go. But we did have multiple tenants. For instance, we had Lerner Berlin as a tenant. We had another company that we're cooperating with as a tenant. And we had a bunch of small instances like Cyber for Edu. And obviously we couldn't share a secret, which meant we didn't really have one cluster. We effectively had like 3 clusters at least at a time. And obviously that would mean that we needed some headroom for each cluster, which meant the entire headroom was quite large, and therefore we had way too much machines. And the pressure was rising, obviously. More people were using the cluster. So we needed a solution, enter B3 Scale. B3 Scale is our multi-tenancy BBB scaler, written in Go. Its development was supported through the Prototype Fund, which is an initiative of the German Open Knowledge Foundation, and is funded by the Ministry of Research and Education. It allows for really fast operations. So all the operation, removing a node, adding a node, et cetera, is really, really fast. It has 2 basic concepts, which is front ends, which is different tenants, and the usual backends that you all know from Scalelight. It also knows about tags. I'll go into that. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide. And we have an agent process called B3 Scale Node-D, which actually knows the load and the state of an agent. So we don't have to second guess ourselves. We actually know what's going on a given node. And it also has implicit Prometheus monitoring support, which is also nice. And we'll also see what that means. So why would we need tags? The most interesting use cases were BBB 2.3. So when we introduced BBB 2.3, we actually had the possibility to switch over friendly users earlier than everyone else, that we had to inform first and give them a preview of the features that were about to come. So we could gradually switch over nodes by the bunch, and really only give those that were ready for 2.3 access to 2.3, and everyone else could continue with 2.2 as they were used to. We could even assign them betas if we wanted to. We didn't though. Currently, we have an HTTP API in the making, which is really interesting for a lot of reasons. We do not use the recording feature of Big Blue Button, and one huge problem with others adapting B3 scale was that they said, okay, we need support for recording. So that's also something that's coming up. And we have experimental support for hiding the node names, because a lot of people complained that, hey, I have to rejoin, or if I join the next day, then the room is on another machine and I have to assign permissions. I have to allow my browser to access phone and camera again. So that's quite annoying. So we have experimental support for hiding all the machines behind the coherent URL that can actually also be depending on the tenant using it. So not only a generic name like BB-InfoRun, but like conference.tenant.org or whatever. It does have some shortcomings in BBB itself, so it breaks with multiple breakout rooms and other things. But in general, we would like to rule out those problems and make that a proper feature that we feel confident supporting. So if you would like to talk about that, you're welcome. So this is B3 scale at work. So you can see this is different tenants throughout the day and how they're using this. So we can also use this for capacity planning. So you can see, for instance, that here there is a tenant that obviously uses capacity throughout the day. This tenant has a peak in the morning. And so this helps planning, and this also helps debugging with different tenants, which is really nice. Another thing that is really, really great is the way we were able to collaborate. There were a lot of things that were extremely quick to land in an upstream version. And one of them was like, we figured the waiting page wasn't translated, and that was very confusing. So we came up, or I came up with a really simple way to add translations to the waiting page, which is outside the usual translation ecosystems for technical reasons. And so I typed up a draft, and basically, if first version was in within a few days, and it was then shipped. And so this is completely awesome. Also, people asked for an explicit confirmation that makes people understand that everything they just did, again, there is no recording in our case, will be gone if you do not explicitly save it, if you end a specific room. And so I proposed something, and I didn't even get around to finish that patch. And someone thankfully picked up from there, finished it, and it ended up just in the next version. And it was completely awesome. And finally, of course, and I did mention that in the beginning, the community, especially the Big Blue Button DE Matrix channel people, are just immensely helpful. They find things, they're smart, and it's just, it would have been a completely different game without them. I'll get to the shout outs later, but I'll just leave that here for the moment. Okay, so then we come to the things to improve. Packaging, this is something that Fred has allowed a couple of people to peek into. We've already picked up on it, but this is something that's hopefully going to improve, and I'm confident we'll be seeing improvements there. The Grento situation, Fred just told me that there is going to be a talk about this tomorrow, so you really don't want to miss that, because whatever solves the Grento problem is something that solves a lot of problems for all of us. Then finally, predictable rooms that are not only predictable in URL, but also all other aspects of it are predictable, like the dial-in number, etc. That will be immensely helpful. Right now, this only really becomes the thing on first join. we would really like for that to change, so you can really schedule meetings in a reliable way, even on a cluster. And it would be immensely helpful to be able to migrate running sessions. And I know this isn't easy and it's a multi-part story. So yeah, that is that. Then it would be really, really great if the whiteboard could be exported, especially if it could be exported back to PDF or even Office files. And iOS support. The problem really is schools are buying iOS hardware as much as I hate it, but apparently MDM on iOS is deemed so superior that well, we'll have to deal with it. And so yeah, the fact that Safari is particularly limiting iOS access to yeah, sharing and stuff probably necessitates a separate app, at least on iOS. So no browser-only experience. And I think that would immensely help the acceptance of Big Blue Button. Lessons learned, wrapping up here. Always audit your software. I've said that it's the strength of open source, so make use of it. Anticipate external factors. We knew that telecom was bad, but I mean, we asked and it was still a problem. We did not anticipate the massive Vodafone fuck up. And yeah, virtualization is something that should be avoided at this point, as long as Big Blue Button is not using a service-oriented architecture or design. It's best to just run it on bare metal hardware. And also understand exactly how your use case is different from the others. Like in our case, we thought, okay, great. We just take Greenlight, we take Scalite, and there's our cluster, but we didn't realize that with GDPR, multiple tenants and custom hosted front ends, that would actually bring us in a situation where the single key constraint is a problem for us. And so that's where B3 Scale came really convenient. And finally, open source really works. Up. Whoop. I'm sorry. Yeah. And just to give a short lookout on what's up for InfoRun, we are actually now in the process of becoming a legitimate co-op, Genossenschaft. Paperwork is being done, and we are about to offer a complete open source-based solution for schools that extends beyond Big Blue Button. It also means identity management with Keycloak, Moodle, Nextcloud, metrics for chat, WordPress, if school homepages need to be hosted, etc., etc., etc. In a way, in a package that works across schools, but still keeps schools separate to be GDPR compliant. And well, now that I've done my fair share of advertisement, let me do a final round of shout outs. Thank you to Blindside and the BBB community. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Noemis, for the invaluable Ansible role. Thank you for SenseCall, which have been doing all this voluntarily, and they've created amazing tools, and they've accumulated amazing knowledge that I think we all profited from. Thank you to Daniel Schreiber from TU Chemnitz, who took the effort of packaging the improved HTML5 packages. Thank you to Ebba for hosting the Ansible role. Thank you to Brutal Bertie for backporting the patches that we did to the Ebba repo after the Ebba repo forked off. And thanks to Lucas for digging into security-related issues. And with that, I would get to your questions.
Thanks, Daniel. That was great. For folks who have questions, please type them in the chat. And I think Daniel and I will be scrolling up in the chat here for a little bit to try to pull out your questions. Leanne, I'll just mention the actual Big Blue Button WordPress plugin. It is not maintained right now. We had done a lot of work on it in the past. Someone else is going to need to step up and maintain it. Can't do everything, but we would love to see a WordPress developer.
Yeah, we are not using, so WordPress is not something that we want to integrate Big Blue Button into, but the idea is that mostly schools will use that through the learning management system, which is through Moodle. And WordPress is really just a way to maintain like a school homepage. We know that a couple of schools basically now need a new hoster for like their everyday needs because of political changes in some states, or one state in particular. So that's why we basically wrap the whole package, but it doesn't necessarily mean any integration of Big Blue Button in that area.
Terry's question, Daniel, can you adapt the number of Big Blue Button backends to the participants' number?
Sorry?
Just Terry had asked a question, can you adapt the number of Big Blue Button backends to the participants' number?
If you mean in terms of auto scale, no, but there are all the informations that would allow you to do so. Like if you build an autoscaler out of this, obviously, because you can't migrate sessions, that feature is not as valuable as it seems. But yes, like all the metrics are there, so you could, in theory, autoscale it. It's just not done by default.
Daniel, while other people are typing in questions, I think you have been working with open source for 20 years. Were you looking for an open source solution when you started looking around, or the fact that Big Blue? Yes, okay.
Yes, definitely. There was just I mean, for us, it was a matter of like our core, basically. I'll just call it core because that's what we want to be and what we're going to be going forward. Comprises mostly of people that have a background in open source, in the networking community, like in networking as in TCP/IP and autonomous systems, and also development, which is also mostly open source based and related. So yeah. This was something that we took out. Like, it's always easy to take a product and run with it, and then you lose all the benefits of open source contribution, as you can probably testify.
Yes.
And again, like if you keep your proprietary solutions, you're also doomed to maintain them. So the idea is to upstream as much as possible to the degree that seems useful. Like I'm not going to cram special features that I did because I needed it as a sort of a hack and burden everyone with it. But if enough people find it useful, or I think I can, or we think we can make it a general feature, then of course we're going to upstream it.
And I think
I'd like to emphasize, for selfish reasons.
Yeah, I like to emphasize for people that is actually one of the reasons why you guys, are presenting, and the fact that you had not only built upon, but we're really trying to contribute back. Yes. This is sort of the prototype for other groups as well, that the more you contribute, the more you get. And there's been comments here in the chat, like a lot of groups were kind of solving similar problems and had faced similar problems. So it's certainly welcome when somebody points out an issue in the documentation or an issue in the product and maybe sends a pull request to help improve it. It may not be clear, but that's really a big help. Because a lot of things are distributed now and pieces of the product can be worked on independently, a lot more than they were recently. And it frees up the core developers' time to sort of dive into the deeper, harder problems to solve. And it's very much appreciated. We've got 5 minutes left, and then we're going to stop the recording. But of course, Daniel, you are more than welcome to stay in the session and just continue to collaborate with others here. But just for the time, we will be switching the live stream over in about 5 minutes. The one thing that I think I'm going to pick up on, one thing that you had actually built up something to do the echo test, and this was Selenium. So maybe could you expand on that a moment? Did you like run Chrome with a virtual frame buffer and just have it go into a session and figure out whether it did a yay or nay?
Yeah. So actually, it's not Chrome in a virtual machine. We took one of the dedicated 12-core machines, set it aside, and that is basically the machine that continuously runs these tests. So yes, it's very resource intensive, but at the same time, it's worth the effort. And as to the root cause why the nodes failed the echo test, it's different. It's different reasons. In the early times, it was mostly Coturn causing us headaches. Then it was a bug in the new turn server that also caused us headaches. And these days, we still see random failures sometimes, and we try to debug them on an individual basis. But every time something pans out that seems to be an upstream bug, we file it for obvious reasons. Solving the problem with DTAG. No, obviously we rented space in a given data center. The solution is to make contracts with others that do high traffic volumes with DTAG and that are actually interested in supporting projects like us. Yeah, we are also trying to talk to DTAG. So let's see how that pans out. But it was really difficult to basically have the trigger on the head and be told like, okay, you accept our terms, or you will be gone with all your hosted machines. So that was really problematic. And yes, I'm happy to talk about that after we're done. One of the things we see recently, I was just reminded in terms of failing echo test is a failing MongoDB. And I think that's been experienced by others as well in 2.3.
Daniel, very thankful for the talk. This was very pragmatic and touched on a lot of points that anyone who is administrating Big Blue Button at scale could relate to. And hopefully some of them out there may actually reach out to you to sort of leverage a bit. And as always, we encourage people to post to our forums. There's lots of people out there, and anything that's posted will get searched by the index, the search engine, so you can share with others. I want to thank you, Daniel, for the presentation. I'm going to stop the recording now. It was really good, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Daniel, you're welcome to stay here. I put a link into the session for the last session of the day. So Big Blue Button, Jesus Verdugo is going to talk about Scale Lite, and Andreas Mundit is going to talk about providing Big Blue Button for schools at Baden-Württemberg, which they, I think, got up to 4,000 Big Blue Button servers. So there's some pretty heavy hitters here with Daniel and the others, but I invite you guys to stay and continue to interact with Daniel. And Daniel, I will talk to you again soon. Thanks again.
Thanks, Fred. Okay, so if you guys like, you can now turn on and unmute yourself. And we can just chat normally.
Privacy is respected, but feel free to, if you're having a conversation with another person in the chat and you have a more in-depth question for them, feel free to send them a private chat message. And we will be recording the session starting in just a moment. And at the end of the week of the conference, we will be sending out information on how to access the recordings. Okay. So we are now starting session 3 of Big Blue Button World Day 2, or session 4. Sorry about that. So today we will be hearing 2 presentations on ScaleLight. So the first one will be from Jesus Federico from Blindside Networks, and he'll be giving a ScaleLight load balancer overview. And then after Jesus's presentation, we'll be hearing from Andy Munt. Andy is going to be talking about using ScaleLight and Big Blue Button in the German state of Baden-Württemberg. And yeah, so with that, I turn it over to Jesus. Thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you. Yes, thank you everyone for coming. Welcome to this presentation. Today we're gonna talk about, this might not surprise you, Big Blue Button and how to make it scale. My name is Jesus Federico. I am a software engineer by trade, as well as my previous presenter. Educated in Mexico with a bachelor degree in computer science and a master's in e-commerce. I'm an active developer in several programming languages. Advocate of open source, have been for more than 20 years. Core developer of the Big Blue Button project for over 10 years. And mainly focused on integrations with third-party applications, and also director of products and services at Blindside Networks. When we do travel around the world, because we have that opportunity with Big Blue Button, presenting and showing, things that people wearing my name do, spreading the word, is we normally hear the question, or I have a question, receive a question, does it scale? The short answer to that is yes, it scales. The question is how to scale. So when we talk about applications, how to scale application, how the application scale, we can go through either 2 paths. One is scaling up, what we call scaling up, or scaling out. Scaling up will be more like making the server where the application is running bigger. And the other is spreading the load into multiple small size or same size, even different size servers or machines running the same application. In terms of Big Blue Button, normally the first step that we do is just stop using the computer you hide under your desk for demonstrating to your manager that the Big Blue Button works, and getting it to work in a real server, or probably even in an EC2 instance on AWS or any other cloud. So just making it like larger, but there is a limit with that. On Amazon, we have the experience that machines running on a C5A 2X large with 8 CPUs and 16 gigabytes can hold right above 100 users. I could say a little more, but Fred is listening to me and he's going to say, keep it like small. So 101, 120, 105 will be still 100 plus. So that's more or less the number. But there is a limit. We can hear more about why is that limit coming tomorrow. I invite you to come to Anton's presentation tomorrow, and we can ask him about that. But it doesn't matter how much big we bring the computer or the server up, it's always going to have that limit. It's one of the, it's more has to do with the architecture of the application. So the only viable option we have is to scale out. So we're scaling out. If we take the very same size of computers and we spread them, we will be like 100 times the number of servers, naturally. So 4 servers will give us 400 users, and 400 server will give you 40,000 users concurrently. But what do we need for that? For that, we need a load balancer. As we know, we have been using load balancer for more than 2 decades now, and we know how that works. It's essentially some application or some front end spreading the load in several servers that are, as I say, running the same application, BlueButton in this case. But this application or this load balancer for BlueButton is like as no other. In this case, our load balancer must know the load of the BlueButton servers in the pool. It must keep track of the status of the service, and ideally the status of the meetings as well at all time. It must remember every meeting, in which server every meeting is running, and even perhaps what users are in each server and what meeting. And at the same time, must be able to respond to BlueButton API requests. That is not a simple load balancer you find everywhere. So that means that it must be an application. This is a dedicated application for BlueButton. And this is because I see that logo from Greenlight. It represents Greenlight. It's not official logo. Greenlight doesn't have an official logo, but I thought it was funny because it's, well done, I guess. So the users come to the third-party application, in this case, Greenlight. Greenlight is going to be seeing a single BlueButton server. No matter how many BlueButton servers are behind the load balancer, it's only going to be one. But the user must be connected in a one-to-one with that particular server. So when the connection or the meeting has started and the user has joined, the communication with the load balancer ends, and now the user is connected with the BlueButton server. These are what companies like the 4Big in our community, Blinds and Networks, NConf, Air Advice, and BBB Host BBB have been offering for more than 8 years, 10 years, let's say. So this is what we have. We have our own load balancers. And in the case of Blinds and Network, we call it LB5, load balancer 5, which comes from the original version we have. It should be LB300 by now, but that is a commercial or a proprietary development or application. So the options, when you want to scale BlueButton, what options do you have? Obviously, the easy one is go through any of these vendors and ask them to scale through their load balancer. But you might want to have your own cloud for several reasons, which is what we have been seeing in the presentations today. So what do? You either go and develop your own, or you go to one of the solutions, open source solutions that are out there. So I'm gonna digress for a minute here. I'm gonna tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a happy planet called Earth, where human beings were so happy to be. It was the best place for them to be, it seems. And people was traveling around the world, able to see all these cool places in the world, gathering, having meetings, and even having face-to-face large gatherings like the summit, the BlueButton Summit back in 2019. But that was just about to change in 2020 from having crowded classrooms all over the world. Because the COVID pandemic, we end up having the new phase that we have of schools, just empty classrooms. It was a new reality that we had to face. And in February 2020, one of the first schools, or one of the first places on Earth that started getting these lockdowns, or called for lockdown, was China. At the beginning of February or end of January, the University of Liverpool, Xi'an Jiang Tong and Liverpool University received notice that in 4 weeks they were going to enter in a lockdown. It's not the largest school on earth, but they still have 50,000 students, and they wanted to continue the service in the way they were doing. So they are not foreign to using open source or IT for distance learning. They have probably one of the largest deployments of Moodle in China. And they were using BibluBoton already, but the question was here how to scale it, because they had to have all the students now at once. So they had to have a cluster of at least 24 servers. It was defined at the time, and but they needed a load balancer. So they came to us, BlightSci Networks, which they had already a relation. We know the people from their IT department, and that's how Scalelight Load Balancer started. It became in a short period of time, like 4 weeks, as I say, it became as a simple load balancer for BibluBoton written in Ruby on Rails. In those 4 weeks, they were the first. They were not only the sponsor, but the first user of Scalelight. They started testing. Well, we did like quick iterations, and it was like in one version every week, and then one after the other. And they started with Alpha 3, I think, and then they did finally launch with Alpha 4, and we released in the end on March 13 the first version of Scalelight. Over the time, a lot of universities joined it, and like community grow. This was an open source project since the beginning. We agreed that this was going to be the case. So from that simple application or simple load balancer for BibluBoton, it became an scalable load balancer for BibluBoton, which has been for 195 times, and it has been released, or we have had 32 releases so far. A few more coming, and now we are in short periods of releases again of 2 weeks is what we're trying to keep it like with the small updates or releases. The images are, well, this is bundled or distributed with Docker images. So the images have been downloaded over 1 million. We just lost track. Over 1 million is of downloads in 1 year. That's the only data we can get from Docker Hub. So there are stories spread all over. Some of them are portraying the different usages of Scalelight and BibluBoton. And obviously, those deployments that we know are there in Europe. Europe has been strong in the use of BibluBoton, and as we will hear of the uses of Scalelight as well. There are quite a few of those deployments. And well, this is the new normal, and I think is going to be for the time to come. We are here to support you, and as the team that developer, these are the contributors of the project, the original ones, the core developers, Ahmad, Calvin, and myself as the creators or the starters, and the name with no name, the guy with no name but brave enough to show his face, Amal Rails, who just recently joined us for to the team. He's the one responding and doing the heavy lifting right now. But let's talk about the architecture of the application, getting to more of the technical stuff. So Scalelight, in the way it works is we try to make it simple. So that statement that we had at the beginning, we try to continue or keep it that way. We try to make it simple, a simple architecture. So Scalelight should be an application in our mind dedicated only to the balancing and nothing else. And so what we have is connected with, it has, or the third-party application, in this case is represented by Moodle, CAMs and CDs, and all the BibluBoton servers are handled by the load balancer. This is polling or gathering the information and putting in memory database, Redis, and is also receiving the recordings that are processed by the BiblioBoton servers themselves, pushing them to SQLite, and SQLite is storing somewhere, either local file system or a network file system, and keeping the references in a database. So when another request comes, it's able to respond either about the state of the meetings and or the recordings. So those are the pretty much the features of the application. Now the question is, how do we deploy this thing? The answer to that is there is no right there's no right answer. There's no single recipe for deploying really a SQLite. If you are an experienced system administrator, which I will guess most of the people here in this meeting are, you know that depending on the needs and depending on the resources constraints that you might have to choose different ways of deploying. There is no single recipe. We ship this with systemd because at the time which is just right, the next step about starting manually the Docker containers. Well, all this is Docker, but as we advance it, we realized that there were other ways of doing it and probably simpler, and we start giving people choices. The next attempt of doing this was Docker Compose. There is a recipe for doing that. And it seems like the next natural step is using Docker Swarm. We want to make it like more robust, and to end with something even more robust will be Kubernetes, which is, to be honest, my tool of choice in this case. And over there you have a bunch of options depending on the cloud you're going to choose. And then there is another alternative that is Amazon ECS directly, which I haven't explored yet, but it's in my list of things to do, hopefully soon. So let's get into the components of a SQLite. In terms of, let's say, containers that we must have, in this case, again, is Docker. We must have a front end that is going to be the one receiving all the requests coming from the exterior. And then we have the API itself, which is the Rails application, and some way to respond to the recordings that we're going to be serving as well. We have two jobs or task managers that are going to be the poller, which is pulling the data from the BiblioBoton servers, and the recording important is just listening or watching a directory where the recordings are placed, so it's processed and pulled to the database. The systemd is all together in one place. Is pretty much as you see. I should actually put the square a little smaller and be in the dotted one. And all the database and all the components are exterior to that. We have in the README that documentation that should be improved, I know, and we're gonna work on that. But it's that was a simple way of doing it. Then the next one, there is all-in-one node using Docker Compose. There are a couple of documents there that I wrote about 1 year ago. You can see the links there, or search for SQLite Legacy Deployment, SQLite Legacy Deployment Part 2 for recordings. And the code is there. Just keep in mind that this is a version 1.0 stable. There is a new version that is doing things a little different. Just to mention here is the difference is, so we have in this original version, we have one image per component, as we see here. And then we have this Nginx, which is a custom image that we built for doing Nginx. But we receive feedback and we receive requests actually from the users of SQLite, and we kind of change the way. Getting back to the components, one of the things that we were required to do is to decouple these recordings and actually make these independent, so you can have anything as a front end. It could be Nginx, which is what we use now, or it could be HA proxy or even Apache if you want. I don't think anybody will do that, but it's an option. So the first thing we did was to, for this version, is now we have everything in one. And in terms of Docker Compose, we're naming them the same way. You know, SQLite dash something, in this case, Polar API, recording importer, but they are in reality the same image. And then we have a new image, which is coming directly from BBlueButton. This is BBB playback proxy, which must be updated with any code that we have. If we ever have, or when we have updates on BBlueButton, this image is generated so it can be pulled with the latest version all the time. And lastly, this component over here can be anything. In this case, we are using for our deployments Nginx, but it could be anything if you want, if you make those changes in your Docker Compose file. We can even enhance this a little bit by doing using AWS services. So in the previous slide, what I'm showing is that we have Redis, Postgres, and the recording side, the file system. While this is convenient because you can run it in one shot, this is something I don't recommend for production. This is what I will start recommending for production, which is like, you know, even using Docker Compose, which is it's just stable enough, especially because you can depending on the configuration, the images can be more resilient, then they can restart themselves or come back to life if they fail. So that's a pretty nice thing to have. And just externalizing the services, the database, Redis, and the file system with an EFS. This is the same one, and I'm making it even a little more robust. We'll be using the same deployment. You can have two machines and just put a load balancer at the front. A network load balancer, an application load balancer will be the recommendation in terms of AWS services. And that will make, and we have been running these, or we were running this way for a while for demo. Demo holds sessions or users. It's over 1 million users right now, and a number of sessions that we host every day. Although, as I say, my tool of choice will be on Kubernetes, and this will be, I cannot even see the details of these. Hopefully you do. Well, we can share these slides though. So indeed, we have the spread of all the services. We're using all the resources we have. We have an ingress where receive all the requests, and then we have two services, one for the main one, which is going to be the API service, and another one for receiving the recordings from BBlueButton. And then on SQLite, we spread those on the different services that we have or deployments that we have, the API, the recordings with the images I just mentioned before. We have an spool, which is going to be only accessed by the BBlueButton servers through these other service. And we have only one, which is important, only one recording importer running for the full deployment. And we might have one, because Dimon said, one Polar per node in the cluster. So we make things a little more efficient. So we have configuration, secrets, etc., and we have a persistent volume claim with the persistent volume tied to an EFS instance. So this would be like the cleaner deployment for me, and the easier for any administrator. If you have the resources for using Kubernetes, not everybody has, not everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it through these clouds. So, but that will be my recommendation. Just to finish up, I'm gonna use only 1 minute to mention here that the roadmap for what we're working on right now, we are on version 1.1. Whatever revision we have, we only focus on bug fixes. That's pretty much a frozen version. And we are starting the development of version 1.2. which is mainly going to have an epic that we call this protected recordings. And protected recordings is nothing but a unique link. Because right now, if you share the recording with the Word, you have access, or the Word have access to it. Protected recording will give the ability of applications to force users to go through the third-party application instead of just in the way it is right now. The other thing we have to work on is documentation. That is our commitment for version 1.2, and then the big change for version 2, and then is where we will be adding new functionality if anything comes. Is version 2, where the main change is going to be a single Docker image, which is what we have now. It's just we had to support the old way, and more recommended deployments as described in this presentation. How to get involved? This is a very important one. Please, if you want to get involved, reporting bugs is the best way to do, because we are making the product better. You are helping us to make the product better. But it's very important for us to receive from you not only the report that something is failing, is describe the problem and describe the steps to reproduce it. And very, very important is commit yourself to test it, because that is where other open source projects have probably a problem. When testing, we know that we did it. We think that we did it right, but we need to at least have the help of that who found it. To prove that we did it. So if we release a beta version, the beta version is for you. It's not for everybody else. It's for the person who did the report. So please help us with that. Feature requests are welcome, but they need to be beneficial for everybody, not only for your particular use case. Hopefully, it's gonna benefit everybody else as well. So and it should be. Hopefully well documented. Again, state the problem you need or want to solve, and if you have a potential solution, also describe it in there. Pull requests are welcome, mostly for bug fixes. Those are normally emerge right away. But new feature or improvements, they should have an issue open, and hopefully we already discussed the best way of doing it. And with that being said, may the force be with you, and feedback is always welcome. You can share your thoughts with me, send me an email. There is my address, and we'll be open to comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesus. Okay, so we're going to go over a few questions from the chat, and then we'll turn it over to Andy Munt, who will also be presenting on SQLite. So to kick off the questions, Johannes asks, have you considered architectures where Corento/FreeSwitch/BBB-HTML5 don't need to run on the same machine? So individual components can be scaled horizontally by adding more machines.
That is a good question, but I think it's a question for tomorrow meetings because it's part of the BlueButton product or core product itself.
Okay, Johannes, so tune in tomorrow to some of those sessions. Michael asks, is there a way to just have 2 to 3 EC2 BBB servers and keep one all the time and spin up and off the other 2 as needed?
On demand, we don't have the capability, no as it is right now, of turning off on and off servers on demand. But you will have to have, it's a little more complex than just turning on and off servers. No, we don't have that capability. It will require an extension of the API and also some way to connect to whatever cloud we're using, in this case, AWS or any other, right? That's something that we might think of in the future.
Okay. Another question / feature request, I think, is could SQLite spin up a dormant server in the server pool? This would be great to set up cost-efficient, small Big Blue Button clusters.
Same thing, right? Is based of we have an idea. I've been just thinking of how to do that. But again, this comes to it cannot be generalized because it depends on the API. The API or the solution depends on the cloud where you have these machines running. We lately have been working closely with AWS, but but we know that there are others using some other clouds, like DigitalOcean or others.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering that. I'm just going to take one quick look here at the YouTube chat to see if there's any other questions here. Okay, Faircom asks, as we run a K8s cluster, is there already a timeline for Kubernetes support of the SQLite?
Say it again, please.
Here, I'll paste it in the chat since
right.
It's coming from the YouTube channel. I'll go ahead and paste that in the chat.
Oh, you just put it there. Okay. Well, that's more up to the deployment. As I say, we have a demo right now running on Kubernetes. That's the fact. So it's supported. It's just that we're not sharing the scripts, let's say, for that deployment. But it can be done. I mean, it works pretty well on Kubernetes. As I say, that's my tool of choice.
Okay. And then Michael has a question. Do the cloud computing companies have APIs that might be able to be used to do this poor man's on-demand load balancing?
Yeah, but we will have to connect to those APIs. I say AWS have the API AWS offers different than the one that Google offers and DigitalOcean offers. So it must be generalized in a way that works with everybody. Probably is the use of different tools. Likely won't be like, it will have to be done with an external tool. As I say, what we're trying to do here with the SQLite is to keep it simple and to make it just scale, and that's it.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Jesus, for your time and sharing all of your knowledge with us. That was awesome. Jesus, I'm assuming we'll be sticking around for Andy's presentation. So Jesus can be in the chat if you'd like to start a private chat with him to ask any more questions, or you can send him an email at jesus@blindsidenetworks.com. Thanks again, and I'm going to turn it over to Andy Mundt.
Thank you, yes.
Hello, welcome everybody. Many thanks also from my side for Jesus' talk. And you will see now our setup in Southwest Germany, where we use this scaling, which Jesus showed quite extensively, I would say. Okay, just a few words about myself. I'm a physicist. I worked in research for quite some years. I did quantum optics, and we trapped some ion, and it were experiments for quantum computing or leading to some quantum computing maybe in the future sometime. And then after this time at university, I spent a few years at an optics company doing optical lithography. And then I switched to school again. So just to give an idea about my background. And now I want to give you an overview about our setup of BBB and SQLite. And I just show you how it all started last year and how we designed our system to run Big Blue Button instances on very powerful machines with many cores. And then when in the winter we had a second wave of school lockdowns, and we had to scale the infrastructure. And now in this spring, I want to say a few words about upgrading to the version 2.3. Okay, how did it start? We all know last year, March 2020, first lockdown started, and then suddenly all schools in Germany were locked down, and the question was, how can we provide some education? How can you continue educating our pupils and students? And we ask ourselves, can we provide an online teaching tool for our schools where we, the users, the teachers, the students, are in control? And we said, well, let's give it a try. And this was a grassroots initiative led by Andreas Grupp. I also want to mention my co-workers, Frank Schiebel, and of course myself. And later we got support from Johannes Dost and Matthias Waffenschmidt. And Andreas Grupp, it was his idea to give Big Blue Button a try, and he already knew the software. All the others, we were not familiar with it. And he asked the public administration if they would support like a prototype to try Big Blue Button at some schools. And then it was a lot of back and forth, and it's sometimes not so easy with this huge public administration system. And in the end, we got very powerful machines with 32 cores and 64 threads. And at that time, people said, well, this Big Blue Button is just a single node process, and you can't make use of these many cores. So we thought about that and thought about how can we use these strong machines. And well, we had also, as I said, no experience with BBB. And so we aimed for a very flexible setup where we can adjust and flexibly move in the parameter space, kind of. And of course, then if you want to scale this, you need to do this all automatically. Okay, what we did, we started with a Debian stable on the host system, and for every host we had a /27 IP4 network. And for us, because there was already some experience, we decided to try a very simple setup. We put on every host systemd nspan containers, and in these containers we installed Ubuntu, and then we did the usual Big Blue Button installation. I will come to that later and explain it a bit, because it's not so common, this setup. Then we put on every host also in a systemd nspan container Debian stable with Kotlin as a turn server, and we used Ansible for configuration management, and I come to that later in more detail. In the beginning, one SQLite server for load balancing. Okay, how does this systemd nspan stuff work? Without going into the details, it's pretty simple. Pretty simple. You just run the bootstrap. So you install a basic root file system into a directory. In Ansible, this looks like this, and well, the key point is just this command, more or less. You add some extra packages. You define some repositories, a directory, and some mirrorware where the packages are fetched from. Okay. After that, you have to do, of course, some configuration, like provide the network, you want to log in with your SSH key, and a bit more. And then you can just start this container. Okay, and this is more or less just another call in Ansible, or with systemd, you could just system control start and then this container service. Okay, now you have the system up and running. this Ubuntu system, and then we just run with Ansible. We logged into this Ubuntu, and we just fetched the brand up-to-date Big Blue Button install script and piped that into Bash. And here are some parameters which are used by Ansible to find the correct host name and IP address and stuff like that. And then this takes some time. And after that, you're ready. You have a Big Blue Button server. Okay. And now we cloned this container. This can be done with command machine control. In the beginning, we made a single image of this container, and this could be fetched from an extra server. But later we found it easier to prepare always one container from scratch on one host, and then clone this container as often as we wanted to do. In the beginning, we really started with about 27 or 28 Big Blue Button containers, but then we quickly reduced this number. That was the status already at Easter. Most of this design and setup has been done in Easter vacancies in last year, and we got more servers, and the setup was the stand-up setup which Jesus described before. Our schools have all a Moodle instance, which is not provided by our team, but by the academic network provider. And they use this Moodle plugin, and this Moodle plugin connects to the SQLite server. Jesus already showed that. And then the SQLite server, we had one single SQLite server, fetches all information from the BBBs on all these hosts, and finds the one which have nothing to do, and redirects the user to his session. Okay, that was the status at mid of last year, and we had about 40 hosts and more than 1,000 Big Blue Button instances. This worked fine. And after summer vacancies, school started, so there was not that demand to scale this more, and it was rarely used. But then winter was approaching, second wave, schools again shut down, and this is a screenshot from our monitoring system. And you see we had about 32,000 parallel users. It's typical pattern. Student starts at 7:45, 8 o'clock, something like that. And then usually in most schools, there are 2 45-minute slots and then a break. And then again, 2 45-minute slots, break again and again. And then there's break for noon. You go for lunch or something like that, and then in the afternoon there's not that much traffic. And at that usage, we got troubles with the single SQLite we had at that time, and we did not care about the SQLite before because it always worked. We just focused on other problems, and SQLite, it worked for us, and we didn't study it in detail. So we were pretty beginners. Probably we were still. But what happened then? We were asked by the administration if we can scale our infrastructure. And when I heard this the first time, Andreas asked me, or he told me that the administration has asked us if we can scale this our setup by a factor of 10. I thought it was a joke. Okay, we had already thousands of BBB instances. We had about 40 huge servers, and now we should do this all factor of 10. And it was just before Christmas, and I sat down at between the public holidays and thought about that. And we wanted to scale it in a way that we don't need to change everything from user side. So all these Moodle instances should, in best case, keep all the same secret, all the same URL. They connect to the Scalite, and yeah, we came up more or less with this idea. We just first we got some tips from Jesus and Fred, and we made we call it HA Scalite, okay, and Jesus has shown this before in one of his slides. We put 2 or 3 of the normal Scalite, and only one of these Scalites has a polar, okay? And then all these Scalites have an external Redis and PostgreSQL database, okay? So we put that on the host, and so it doesn't matter which Scalite you ask, because the information they handle is the same, because all this information is in these single databases. We have no recordings. I should stress this. This makes it a bit simpler for us, okay? But now we had 10 times the infrastructure we had before. So we thought, yeah, it would be great if we have like this single entry point, and then we route the traffic like in some way to the one infrastructure, like we make 3 infrastructures almost the same with identical with just one of these HA Scalites before in front, and then we have I call it here a main HA proxy, which routes the traffic to one of these infrastructures. So every single HA Scalite has just to take care about one part of the infrastructure, has to collect all the loads and so on, meeting IDs and all this, and all the others, these 3 infrastructures are completely independent, okay? And just this main HA proxy in the front cares about the routing, okay? But of course, if you think a bit about it, it's not so simple, because people join a meeting, and it's not just, well, this meeting is then on one of the servers, okay? Say this meeting is, say here on this server, and now all other participants of this meeting have to end up on this server. So if you're ending up on another part of the infrastructure, there is no such meeting you're looking for. So you have to find a way. How can you make sure that all participants of one meeting end up on the same part of the infrastructure? The Scalite knows about all meetings running. So end up on the same HA Scalite, and then are redirected to this to the meeting. And we studied this a bit, and the trick was you can have in HA proxy something like you can load balance on a URL parameter. Okay, you can the HA proxy looks at the URL that is called, and it picks out this parameter, which is meeting ID in our case, and all requests with this meeting ID end up on the same route. Okay, you can adjust some more stuff. We use this hash type consistent, and it was pretty exciting if it would work, but it worked. With this trick, we were able that every meeting, someone starts a meeting in the Big Blue in the Moodle plugin, and okay, there is already a meeting ID. This meeting ID, depending on this meeting ID, we end on one part of our infrastructure, and everybody who joins this meeting has the same meeting ID. So ends also on the same server, and it just works. I'm looking back. I wouldn't recommend exactly this setup. So probably there are better ways to do this. And yeah, it was like a shot in the dark, kind of, and but it worked. And for us, it's because we all we do this more or less in kind of spare time, or on the vacancies, and we don't have the resources to really do research and to really look into the, like, I think if you want to do this properly, you would really look at the time scales, which requests take how long, and where are problems and things like that. But when we need the infrastructure, we don't have this time, and when we don't need the infrastructure, then we have other things to do, because we are all teaching. Okay, so yeah, it worked for more than 180,000 parallel users. Maybe. I think I said most of the important stuff, and I don't want to extend the time too much. So I come to the next challenge, I would say. That was the upgrade to BB 2.3. So we learned, of course, that LibreOffice is in Docker now, and this is if you like simple and like lightweight setups, then it's of course terrible to put a Docker container in systemd nspan, okay? Because systemd nspan is very basic thing, and you want to keep it simple and really control. Don't want to have this black box, and so this is exactly the opposite. And in the first attempt, I thought, oh shit, we have to completely start from scratch, kind of. But then I thought, well, let's give it a try. Maybe in a first step, we can just manage to run this Docker container in systemd nspan. And indeed, it was possible, and it wasn't too complicated. It's not nice, definitely not. For example, all these nice private users, you have to get rid of those, and you have to switch on and off a few things. You have to make sure that the container has much more power. But in the end, it worked. Okay. If you're interested how to do that, you can look in our repository. It's all public, like public money, public code. And of course, in the long term, we would love to see something like moving this LibreOffice into a separate container, and like the Turn server on one host, we would have then this LibreOffice converting container, and all hosts in a private network would connect to this single container and convert presentations and stuff like that. Okay, so this is also solved for at least for the time being. And I just wanted to show you most of this year's traffic. Note that these numbers here are not correct because there is like an averaging window over the daily data, and these numbers then go down a lot. But up here, that's the maximum number of participants we got so far. I would assume that with new Big Blue, with the new Big Blue Button version, we reduced the number of containers on one host. So we've now on one of these strong machines, we have 4 Big Blue Button instances. And I would expect that we can provide 200,000 for we can support 200,000 parallel users with the infrastructure. But at the moment, as you can see here, you always see when there's vacancies or when there's a change in the Corona regulation, then it changes. And now we have only very little meetings, of course. Okay, I want to thank you for your attention. And of course, I want to thank everybody from the BBB team, Jesus and Fred, and I can't name all of them, for this great software. And I think we have some time for questions left.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was a fantastic and very impressive presentation. You're right that we do have some questions. I see one in the chat from Sergio, who asks, how do you handle failover of single components in SQLite, e.g. the Polar crashes?
We have some monitoring, and I remember that it happens, that it happened sometime, but it doesn't happen often. So usually, right now, I would almost say it just works. We have some problems with the turn server that after some time, the turn server kind of stops working. This is a problem when we have students or people join from very restricted networks where this relay functionality the turn functionality is needed. And this is our main problem or main cause of when things don't work. The Polar, usually we have a hotline and people complain, and then we look what we can do if this there are it's kind of like a hotline or email, and but it's not typical that the Polar crashes, so there is no special measures here.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. If you open it up, you can see it because I'm not really sure how to pronounce some of these words. But Theory asks, what type of Redis and PostgreSQL HA did you set up?
This is just Debian. Okay, we normal Debian packages, and for the HA proxy we switched to backports because we had also had some at very high loads. We had sometimes the problem is with these time slots at schools. Then it's really that in the morning, 6:45 to 8 or something like that, there are thousands of students and pupils joining sessions. And then it's getting calm again. And then from the second to the third lecture, there's again this huge traffic because people switch meetings. And yeah, the HA proxy, we had too many connections there. And then there was like, it couldn't get rid of all the requests. And so we upgraded to backports, and there it seems to have, it didn't appear again, but it's also sometimes not so clear. And it's extremely difficult to test this setup and to check if what was the root cause now. You change something and then maybe you were just lucky the next day, the last day. And so this is pretty difficult. And but in general, we just use Debian standard packages. And if these don't work, we try if it's available a backported package.
Okay, I see a question that came in on the YouTube channel from Victor, who asked if the recordings of this session will be available later. Victor, yes, they will be. At the end of the conference, we will be sending them out, and we'll also be advertising them on our social media and the Big Blue Button website. Lucas says in the chat, do you have any information of other federal states or universities interested in your solution?
Well, we have contact to other German Big Blue Button users from universities, but I think this is all on a informal level. So I think there's also a discussion going on in the public administration how to continue with information technology in schools and how to do more digital stuff in schools. And there are different fractions, like just use the big players or just learn how to do it yourself and do it in free and open source software and things like that. And this is mostly a political thing. And I think there haven't been made decisions on the political layer. And so we are interested in that, and we would love to see that. But so far, it's only on a personal, informal level to our friends and colleagues in other institutions.
Okay, Johannes has a question that I think might have a similar answer. Johannes asks, does the new Baden-Württemberg government support your project?
Well, the new government is the old one. So the person in charge for the school system has changed. That's right. But of course, she has also get into the work and understand things. That's pretty difficult. And there is at the moment, there is extremely strong lobbying from very powerful companies, I would say. And that makes it difficult to get a voice in this discussion.
Okay, we have another question. Is your main HA VM or bare metal, and what resources are required?
The main HA proxy that is on bare metal. And let's just go back to this slide. These HA scalites, they're always the HA proxies on bare metal, and the VMs are just have the scalites, and the Redis and PostgreSQL are also on the host. Okay, this is all on the host, so that we have best performance was the idea behind that design decision.
Okay, I think that's all the questions at the moment. I don't see any more questions in the chat right now. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate all of you taking the time of your day to spend some time with Big Blue Button and with Andy and with Jesus. Like I said earlier, the recordings will be available later this week. Take a look at our website for those and keep an eye out in your email. Thank you all for joining again. And thank you, Andy, for taking your time and your expertise to present with us today.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure to show our work, yes. And thanks again for everybody who made this possible from the Big Blue Button team.
It's our pleasure. Okay, everyone, I'll be stopping the recording and closing the room. Have a great afternoon or evening.